And so we had to take our shoes off, and there we are doing all these movements. The mediator walks in and is like, what are you doing? We're like, hey, this is part of the mediation process.
We
for
need a
us.
minute.
Yeah.
We need a minute. Just hang on.
And a good attorney will do that with you no matter what. And that's why we prefer to keep this behind closed doors.
Yeah, exactly.
Family disputes can make us feel isolated and vulnerable. Maybe you're going through a divorce or a legal dispute about your kids. Perhaps you've spent hours on Google or have even posted anonymously on Facebook to see what others have to say. But are you getting the actual information and support that you're looking for? Our podcast, Legal Lounge, aims to dispel misinformation and downright bad legal information to empower anyone with questions about their family, their children, their finances, their marriage, and the law. As a team focused exclusively on family law matters, we aim to help listeners not only with the information they need, but also with the hope that their situation has a solution. Short disclaimer, please note this podcast is for educational purposes only, and the information should not be relied upon as legal advice or for legal purposes. Welcome back to the Legal Lounge with Modern Legal. I'm back sitting down with one of our attorneys, attorney Tiffany Byrd, and we're excited to give you the 101 on divorce and family law disputes. Welcome back, Tiffany.
Hey, it's good to see you.
It's good to see you. Glad to have you back on the Legal Lounge.
Yeah, I love being here.
Yeah. So we've been practicing for a number of years now and handling hundreds of family law cases. And I think it's important for the listener to learn a little bit more about family law basics and divorce basics.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's jump into it. A common question that I've heard is, what is the difference between separation and divorce itself?
So the way that I like to explain it to people is separation is that period when you've decided that this isn't working anymore and you've decided to live in separate places. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean that the marriage itself is legally over. Mm-hmm. That's what divorce is. Mm-hmm. Divorce is the defining moment when the court says you two are no longer married.
Yeah.
The separation is, in my mind, it's everything that happens before that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So it's going into separate residences. It's trying to start figuring out how do we start uncoupling the things that we've done together so that we can move forward.
Yeah, I love that, the uncoupling term. Yeah, that's a good term because the uncoupling process is different than the legal status change from married to single.
Absolutely. And people, I love it because they're like, I want to be divorced. I'm like, I need you to think about that at the very end. Yeah. What you want to do is actually uncouple your things. Yeah. You want to be able to say, okay, what are we doing with the accounts? What are we doing with the vehicles? What are we doing with the houses? Like, what are we doing with all the stuff that we created? Yeah. Once we get that part done, that lets you feel like, okay, I can move forward. The legal status change, that's a formality. Mm-hmm. That's paperwork that's getting turned in.
Yeah. So, and that's critical because, we can actually start having those discussions on what it means to divide time with the children, figure out where finances are going in terms of cash flow, as well as property and debt division. We can discuss that even before the date of separation, during the separation period, but we really do want to try to resolve as much as we can before we're even thinking about filing for divorce.
Absolutely.
And personally, I think that's actually why I lean into favoring the 1 year of separation in North Carolina because it does give you that platform that you don't even have to worry about the divorce just yet because that's a big step for individuals, right? Because no one gets married thinking that they're going to get divorced.
Absolutely.
And during the process of dividing everything, especially if there's children involved, let's not even worry about divorce until we've resolved the uncoupling process.
Absolutely. And I think it's a really good idea if you can start having those conversations before you physically separate, because then you can plan out what the separation looks like better. And I understand that there are some situations where you can't do that and you have to literally physically separate first, and then you can be in a space to have those kind of conversations. But if you are able to start having those conversations beforehand, it can make the process a lot smoother.
Oh, I totally agree. Because, as soon as you separate into separate residences, you have the bills that accommodate those separate residences.
Yeah.
And I'm positive it's a lot easier to start the discussions on finances when you have less bills, of course.
Yeah.
Let alone, the turmoil that we see often of where are the children?
Right.
Because once you separate, you do want the children to spend time with both parents, so long as both parents are healthy for the children and able to take care of them. But as soon as there are two residences, then you are dealing with two homes that the children are bouncing in between.
Exactly. And you want to make sure that it's stable for them too. So if you and your partner are going into this saying, okay, this is what we're going to do, this is how we're going to make it so that the children don't feel lost in this. You give them stability. They know what's happening. You can talk to them before the separation happens and say, hey, listen, me and mommy, or me and, your other parent, we can't stay in the same house anymore, but we still love you. That's never going to change. It's just you're going to spend time with one parent here and you're going to spend time with the other parent over here. And this is what that's going to look like. Yeah. And if you ever have questions, you can always come and talk to either one of us about it. Like giving them that space, that lessens the fear so much. And I think for the parents that are involved, it can make it feel better for them too, because they're like, okay, my kids are okay. I know I've given them the space to talk to me if they have any questions. And again, it makes the difficult emotional process of uncoupling better.
Yeah. So. Yeah, it sure does.
Yeah.
Because children are little sponges and they're absorbing everything that happens around them.
Yeah.
So it's critical as the parents, as the adults in this situation, to take into consideration their needs and guiding them through the process, but also guide them through the process in a very age-appropriate fashion.
Exactly.
Because trust me, no 12-year-old really cares what the legal process is.
No.
I know, especially if we're dealing with teenagers, trust me, they care more about the prom dress, shopping, or their next competition or sports meet than they care about any
Am I
going
to still see my friends? How is this going to look? Like that,
exactly.
That's their world. That's what they need to care about.
Yeah.
They don't need to know the specifics about how this is happening, why it's happening. They definitely don't need to know why it's happening. Is not something that needs to be part of their world.
Yeah. And as you stated a moment ago, the fact that both parents love them, that's the critical piece that the children do need to know.
Yes. Yeah. And then it's not going to change. Just because you now have loved ones in two separate places, it doesn't mean that something's changed about the love that you're going to receive.
Yes.
So
I love how you said that.
Yeah.
And it's also critical for parents to understand that we can start discussing, and even you can file a lawsuit in North Carolina for child custody even before you separate. A lot of parents don't realize that, and part of that is because biological relations can happen outside of wedlock.
Yes, they can.
I sound like a lawyer when I said that, right?
Yes, that was very lawyerly.
I was lawyerly. But I'm just saying, children can be born regardless of marital status. So it's critical to understand that the law understands that. And if you need to have the assistance of the judicial system to help you resolve custody disputes or even child support issues, because it's financial support for the children and their welfare, you can start that at any point. Generally, though, a judge is going to assume that you're happily caring for the children together if you're still living together.
Correct. Yeah. So you may have a little bit more explaining to do if you're still in the same house and we're trying to have this conversation. But I do think it's a good idea, because if you try to have that conversation before with just the two of you or with counsel and it's not working, then that's what the court is there for.
Yeah.
You want them to be more of a last resort in a sense. Like if you can't resolve it on your own, then we have some place for you to go so that a decision is made.
Yeah. And especially if you think separation is in the pipeline, it's critical to try to address anything as it relates to the children.
Yeah.
Hopefully before you separate.
Absolutely. Yeah. Again, just to be able to provide them with answers when things start changing, because they are going to ask questions.
Yeah.
And so I would imagine that it takes a lot more out of the parent when their children are asking questions that they don't have answers to. And now they're trying to struggle and figure out, okay, well, what do I say? I don't want to say something wrong. Yeah. So if you have that answer already, it makes that part easier.
Yeah. And I will note, when it comes to finances, judges will always prioritize child support above any other financial matter.
Absolutely.
So it is a good piece to try to resolve early on anyway, because that's what would happen in a court system.
Right. Absolutely. You're absolutely, if you had to go to court, you're going to get a hearing for that before you have anything with your property.
Yeah. And spousal support.
Yeah. Oh, God.
Yeah.
They'll put that down the line as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Spousal support tends to be the last claim addressed in North Carolina family law proceedings, most definitely. So let's shift the gears here. Let's say a family has decided to separate. Either they're about to separate or they just separated. What are the legal claims that they're looking at in terms of what accompanies a divorce?
Yeah. So you've got, let's assume that they have children, for example. Okay. So then the claims that you're looking at are child custody. So how are we going to share time with the children? What's the schedule going to look like? Who's making big decisions for them? That's part one. Another claim that you're going to have is child support, like we were talking about before. How are we financially supporting these children? What does that look like? The third claim that you can look at is equitable distribution, which is basically just the division of the property and the debts. So who's keeping what, who's responsible for what, and once you do that, is there any other money that needs to change hands so that it's fair? Okay. And then the last one is going to be spousal support. So is there a need for one spouse to provide additional financial resources to the other while they're rebuilding?
That was a great summary. I'm going to quote you on that one.
Yeah.
So an interesting question then that I hear often as well coming up in that realm is, do I have to prove fault at any stage of the process, especially if there's adultery? How does adultery come up as a factor in this process?
Yeah. And so you don't have to prove fault. North Carolina is a no-fault state, so literally you're separated for a year, and we will allow you to file paperwork to be deemed unmarried.
Yeah.
So that doesn't really have to happen in order to be granted a divorce. Where adultery, for example, can come in is when we're starting to talk about the spousal support component. Because if the spouse who cheated is the breadwinner, then the law says that spousal support is essentially mandatory should that claim be brought up. If the spouse who cheated is the one who would be asking for support, the court says you are not allowed to ask for spousal support. So that's where that can play a factor in that.
It's also interesting because, if there is clear dependency, and what I mean by clear dependency is, let's say we have a 6-7 figure earning supporting spouse, and the dependent spouse has been a stay-at-home parent or spouse for a lengthy marriage, 10, 15, 20 plus years. I like to point out that the marital misconduct is still a factor, most definitely, but it's not always, unless it's the dependent spouse cheating, it's not that big a factor that would concern me if we didn't have clear proof of adultery.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So some people are like, should I hire a PI? Should I have them followed? Should I, ask 101 witnesses of what they saw? I'm like, you can.
Right.
Sure. If you're involving an attorney, that might be very expensive.
Exactly.
And if that may add $10 a month to the spousal support claim,
what are we talking about? Is it worth it?
Exactly.
At that point?
It's a cost-benefit analysis at that point.
And I think in this process in particular, especially if you've got financial concerns about being able to support yourself following the separation and eventual divorce, that's when I think it is the most important to really consistently during this process have a discussion with your attorney and with yourself about the cost-benefit of, okay, what do I ultimately want? What are these things that I'm saying I really would like to be proven? And some of that comes from an emotional side. But if I'm going to spend a lot of money to get this fact shown, but it doesn't make a big difference at the end result, do I want to spend my money that way?
Yeah. And I'll go one step further. If you are the victim, unfortunately, of a cheating spouse, there is a strong emotional component that, to your exact question, you displayed it so logically, but I could imagine an emotional victim of adultery
absolutely.
saying,
Yeah.
I'll spend $100,000.
The judge needs to know.
Exactly.
They need to know this is what happened and this is why, and that should count for something.
Yeah.
And it's like I agree with you. It absolutely should. I just want you to understand that it may cost you a lot to get that fact proven.
Yeah. Yeah. Principles and having your day in court to prove something is very expensive.
Yes.
Agreed.
It is expensive.
Agreed. But we'll do it. We'll do it.
Yeah.
We'll help you. We'll sit right next to you that whole way down.
Absolutely.
There's no conversation more romantic than discussing a prenup with your partner, right? Okay, maybe the song for your first dance does a bit more in the romance department. Speaking of emotions, though, the prenup is a very legal document that everyone has a very emotional reaction to. Many people avoid the prenup conversation because they feel it is an indication that the marriage will fail. But here's the truth. Half of all marriages already fail, regardless of whether the spouses had the prenup conversation or not. If you or someone you care about is getting married, would knowing what marriage involves legally be important? What about having the difficult conversations surrounding finances, career aspirations, and pursuing parenthood prior to the wedding date? If you are looking to build a solid foundation for your marriage, or you want the same for someone you care about, we are here to help you learn more about prenups from a position of knowledge, not emotion. To learn more about family law from a legal professional, book a consultation with a member of the Modern Legal team by visiting our website, emailing us, or calling us at 704-286-6302. Check out the information about Modern Legal services at modernlegalnc.com. And that's another factor that we kind of didn't really touch on is the factor of attorney's fees. It's interesting because I'll be sitting with a client or a prospective client, and they'll say, "Well, this is the law," and I'll say, "Yes, correct. It is the law."
Yes.
Unfortunately, you have to assert your rights under the law to get the forms of relief that the law provides.
Yeah.
I like to remind individuals, look, until that date of separation, the judicial system basically assumes you're in a happy marriage. Now, I know you're telling me you've been unhappy for the past 2 years, or you have not had relations, or you have not gone on a date in years, or someone has been spending money frivolously, or maybe even has an addiction or a gambling habit, right? But the judge doesn't know about any of that.
Right.
And technically, unless it relates to custody or child support at the tail end of your marriage, the judge can't even hear about it until that date of separation occurs, when you are then able to file a claim for equitable distribution or any form of spousal support.
Absolutely. And I think it's interesting because a lot of people, one of the areas of the separation process is dealing with the division of assets. And there can be a lot of back and forth about that. And so when you have attorneys involved, there are a lot of documents that are going back and forth. There's a lot of money being spent on attorneys to deal with your property matters. And that is the one area that you are not allowed to ask the court for attorney's fees for.
That's a good point.
It's like, look, if you want to factor in what you're spending and what you could possibly ask back, if a lot of your fight is over property, know that that is money that you will never see again. And
I've actually had clients ask me, well, why? So I can ask for attorney's fees for child custody, child support, even spousal support.
Yeah.
Why can't I ask for attorney's fees when it comes to property?
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, I like to say, in a way, the game's rigged. Why? Because at the end of the day, the court understands that you know more about your property and debts and what you can handle moving forward than the court will. When the court gets the case, they're going to slap some numbers onto some property, hoping they're the right numbers, and then generally split things 50-50. And if the judge doesn't have to deal with that, and the process is geared for the two of you to resolve things, i.e. neither party can get attorney's fees at the end of the day, then, for the court's, mindset, that's good for them because they're not going to be resolving as much.
Look, I don't want to deal with your property, so please, you deal with it. But if you're going to bring it to me, just know that neither of you are getting money.
Yes.
Neither of you.
Neither
because you brought this to me that I now have to deal with.
I've been in court where judges will say, and of course the judges understand, bigger assets, retirement accounts, houses, vehicles, businesses. So the courts understand sometimes they do have to get involved for the bigger assets. But if you bring in a list of 440 personal property items, including curtain rods.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's a case of mine, just so the listener knows that I had. Then the courts are going to be like, why are you wasting our time?
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about curtain rods.
I don't.
No.
I don't. Because at this point, they're not worth anything. I mean, and that's the other part. Like, the value that the court is putting on this is not the value that you think needs to be there. They're looking at, okay, well, what am I going to pay at a garage sale for that?
Yeah.
Like,
if that.
That's right. That's the value. Not, well, I paid $3,000 2 months ago. Sorry.
And I think the trickiest part when we're looking at property is because certain items are purchased for very high amounts, but then don't hold their value. Some things to think of just off the top of my mind are jewelry, some art, we have furniture or other household items like that. I hear you when you say you spent $10,000 on that dining room set. If you can't get $500 at a garage sale, then that, I hope we can put $500 in the asset debt chart, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, okay, is there anything else that we can do here? Like, and that's when I think negotiation really becomes the crux of what I think is a better way to deal with it, because you can start saying, okay, look, I know what's coming at me when we go to court, kind of, right? You don't know exactly, but you've got a good idea. If the $10,000 dining set, for example, if I know the court at most might give me $500, let's you and I talk, okay, is there a different number that we can put on it so we can start saying, okay, well, if you keep that, then I'm going to keep these two things that equal what you just kept in the dining room.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And you start going through stuff like that.
Yeah. But then again, on the flip side, if we're just arguing over IKEA furniture, please don't even bring it to my attention as your attorney.
Because you're going to spend more. You're going to spend more with me talking about it. Yeah. Just go and, you know what? You're getting ready to start a new phase. Yeah. Get something new.
Yeah.
Just get something. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Save that money that you would have been paying me to build a nest egg for when you set up your new place, and start using that money to do that.
Yeah. Because at the end of the day, look, as attorneys, we want to help you through the legal process.
Yes.
We're not here to argue over the value of furniture. No, not at all.
It's not the best use of us.
Yes.
So if we're a resource to you, use your resources to the best that you can. That's what I like to say.
I feel like that's the quote of this whole episode. Love it. Yes.
I mean, that's at the end of the day, that's what you're trying to do. Like, most people, they do not have an infinite amount of resources. So you have to conserve and figure out, okay, what's the best way that I can use what I do have to get me as far along as I possibly can be.
Best return on investment, ROI. Yeah. Definitely. And that's critical, because a lot of individuals don't actually know the process of what you and I know of separation, family law, and divorce. And so I would like to touch on like the actual processes that are available to resolve these types of disputes. Okay. Of course, the initial ones are trying to negotiate. You try to have those discussions directly with the spouse. If that rises and becomes too filled with tension, maybe you involve a divorce coach, maybe you involve a therapist, a religious leader. I will know, if you involve those individuals, they are not legally trained. So, it's best to keep the legal side for a lawyer later down the line if you have an agreement. Or you involve attorneys as soon as possible, and then the attorneys can address the negotiations. Right. And what's really nice, in a way, is that we remove a lot of emotion. Yes. Not that we're not empathetic to our client's situation, but when we convey a proposal, say to resolve the issue about the very expensive dining room table, we're removing the emotional components that may be associated with that dining room table, right? Maybe it was a gift from someone's parents to the marriage. Maybe it was the table around which you spent all of the children's birthdays, right? And understandably, you have an emotional connection to this item. Yes. But as attorneys, we can quell any emotional concerns you have, but flip it to how can we use this from a legal perspective? And we can address the value through negotiations. Another phase is the mediation process. If you're not able to amicably resolve things outside of court, or outside of court via negotiation specifically, you can go through the mediation process. And then finally, there's the litigation process. Right.
Exactly.
Which is the last ditch stop, as you noted a moment ago.
Yeah, like you want that to be the last ditch. And even if you, like, let's say, look, we resolved 80% of it.
Yeah.
And 20% we can't get across the line, then that's the 20% that you bring to the court.
Yeah.
And then they're not going to look at you like, why are you standing here in front of me with this madness?
Yes.
Why couldn't you have done this on your own 6 months ago or 3 months ago or, whatever the timeline was? Mm-hmm. But I often like to counsel people that I work with that, listen, the divorce process, the separation process, it is an extremely emotional one, but it is also a business one to a certain extent. And if you want this to go smoothly, you're going to have to separate out the emotion from it when you're trying to deal with the business side. There is a space for you to deal with the emotions that come along with this separation and everything that means. And that's when therapists are important. That's when friends and family are important. If the emotions are driving the business decisions that you're making trying to separate this, it is going to become very difficult and way more expensive and way more lengthy. So you are stuck in this place that you already don't want to be.
Yeah.
So if you can separate out the emotion, you get yourself out of that space faster.
Yeah. And when you're acting out of emotion, you're almost, you could be spiraling and not even realize it. And suddenly you're giving up time when you didn't want to give up time with your kids, or you're trying to push on a financial argument that actually doesn't make mathematical sense.
Right. Right.
And so, I completely agree. It's critical to try to separate the emotions out from it. And a good family law attorney will sit with you and be patient with you. I like to say that our role emphasizes the counselor of law in our licenses that is framed on our walls.
Yes.
And to be sensitive to that is important because anyone going through separation or divorce is handling a lot.
Absolutely. And I think within family law in particular, the counselor side shows up a lot more than maybe in some other areas of the law where you don't have as much emotion tied into your day-to-day cases that you have. And so I think it's a good idea that the attorney that you are working with is good at counseling you through separating out the emotion from the business decisions that have to be made. Yeah.
And we can always involve a therapist at any point. I know I've definitely had the pushback from clients that are like, I can barely afford an attorney. What do you mean I can afford a therapist too? And I get it. And maybe it's that because at the end of the day, your relationship with us will change and hopefully end at some point, right?
Hopefully.
This divorce process should only last so long, and I am here with my clients through this particular chapter. So attorney's fees, therefore, are not around for the rest of your life.
Correct.
And so rather it is an investment to get us through this chapter. So then, you can refocus on taking care of yourself, taking care of your mental health, your physical health. I remember I had a call with a client. We had resolved pretty much everything. We're just doing the final paperwork, and he's huffing and puffing. I'm like, what are you doing? And he's like, I'm going for a run because I'm getting my pre-marriage body back. And I'm like, you go, boy, you go.
Yeah.
It was great.
No. So. And I think that's one of the things that it would be good for us to remind clients about that, hey, look, this part is difficult, but I think that you're going to discover things about yourself that you can take with you moving forward it's going to make you better in the future. So like figuring out that, hey, I can do difficult things and still take care of myself, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Like I don't have to focus all of my energy on this one space in my life that's not where I want it to be. Let me focus this on something else that makes me better.
I agree.
Yeah.
And then go one step further. Hopefully you hang out with one of us attorneys because we are humans too.
Yes.
And there are the times when, hey, we have to be human with our client. I understand. At one point, I remember I was in the middle of a mediation and my client wanted to do some type of meditative movement. And so we had to take our shoes off, and there we are doing all these movements. The mediator walks in and is like, what are you doing? We're like, hey, this is part of the mediation process.
We need a minute.
Yeah.
We need a minute. hang on.
And a good attorney will do that with you no matter what, and that's why we prefer to keep this behind closed doors.
Yeah, exactly. Because, no, please don't do that in court.
No, we're not going to do.
Judge would not appreciate that very much.
Yes,
so,
yes.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. Like, there's a lot more control over the process, so to speak, if you're doing it outside of a courtroom.
Yeah, agreed.
You can come up with creative ways to solve certain issues that the court's just not able to do. Mm-hmm. And so if that's really important to you, then it is vital that we try and get this done outside of court.
So before we end up our conversation for the day, any last words for the listener to know?
Consistently reminding yourself that this is one part of the story. It is not the whole story. It does not mean that the time that you spent in that space was wrong. It just means this is the natural conclusion that was supposed to happen, and you are going to get better after it. There are people here that can help you through the difficult part.
Yeah.
So that on the other side of it, you can look back and say, okay, I did that and I'm okay. Look at me now.
I love that.
So
you're not starting from zero. You're starting from experience.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you for coming back on the Legal Lounge. Always a pleasure to have you.
All right. Good to see you.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to our discussion. To learn more about me and the Modern Legal team, go to our website, modernlegalnc.com, or check out the links in our show notes to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. You can also call us at 704-286-6302. If you have been intrigued by the conversation and would like us to continue our discussions, please subscribe to the podcast and leave us a review. See you next time.